we are back from lunch and we're back in session. So, Madam Clerk, item number 5.
Item 5 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-943 for Leslie Denham Newman on APN 040-009-041.
Okay, again, I'll run through the procedures. I'll open the hearing. We'll have a staff presentation with 4 questions of staff, presentation by the appellant, and then presentation by members of the public comment. That'll be limited to 5 minutes per person on their comments. Then we'll bring it back for summation and rebuttal by the appellant. Be 15 minutes for that. Then we'll have staff summation and rebuttal. And then the SIR rebuttal by members of the public. We'll open it up after that, again for public comment. And then we'll have board questions to anyone, staff or the appellant. And then I will close the appeal hearing and we'll go into a discussion and deliberation of the court. So, I open the appeal hearing.
Good afternoon. This is an appeal of commercial cannabis registration 2016-043. It's located at 2200 Gold Strike Road. This is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of the cultivation registration, or of the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of the cultivation registration. This was previously heard by the board, but remanded back to the Planning Commission when new information was presented by the appellant as required by our code. It goes back to the Planning Commission to consider that new information. The Planning Commission considered that, denied the appeal, and has been subsequently appealed back to you. The new information that was provided, well, let me step back. This application was denied when the Planning Department received a second notice of incomplete application from the Water Board that the application filed by the appellant to the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board for a notice of applicability was incomplete. Our code requires that as of September 7th, 2016, a complete application for notice of intent needed to be filed with the Water Board. The Water Board then processed those applications and when they were found to be in compliance, issued a notice of applicability. They were equally swamped as we were, probably more so. The Water Board covers everything from south of us all the way up to the Oregon border, everything within the Central Valley region. So they were obviously under a lot of stress in the application process, and so it took some time for them to review all of their applications as well. An application was submitted to the Water Board by the appellant for Tier 2 registration. I believe it was in August of 2016. Shortly after the deadline for submittal of that information to us, the Water Board notified the appellant that it was the wrong tier and needed to do a Tier 3 application. We received a notice of incomplete application at that point in time. We were busy working on other applications, didn't really do anything about it until the second notice came out in June of 2017. At that point, the notice of incomplete application provided 30 days for the registrant to make a complete application. We waited for that 30-day period. We were not contacted by the registrant at all during that time. And after receiving the notice from the Water Board, that they had not completed the registration process, in September of 2017, we denied the application. The new information that was provided was phone records that showed that the appellant had called the Water Board staff in order to try to remedy that situation. However, the Planning Commission found that that was insufficient evidence to demonstrate a good faith effort to correct the deficiencies of the application. that there was two calls made within about a week after the first, the notice was sent to the registrant, and another one about a month later. And it wasn't until almost a month after that that the county actually denied the application. So at no time during that period did the registrant contact the planning department saying, wait, I'm working on this, with the application, or with the water board to correct the application. We have bent over backwards to try to assist registrants to work through the process, to work with the agencies, but they have to show that they're working with us. It's not the county's responsibility to contact the registrants. It's the registrant's responsibility to inform the county of what's going on with their application. So the Planning Commission denied the appeal on remand, finding that 3 calls to the water board did not constitute a good faith effort. And they also noted that the application is still incomplete. They have not submitted the biological reports required, and if I remember correctly, the fee still had not been paid for the water board permit. So with that, staff is recommending that you uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the registration and the appeal of the registration. Do you have any questions?
Any questions at this time? Seeing none. Chris, presentation.
I'm Chris Williams. I'm appearing for the applicant registrant here. You all feeling a little sleepy after lunch? I think the chronology is really important here, and Peter provided some of it, but it doesn't really get at the heart of it, I don't think. For the life of me, I really have never been able to understand why the staff is working so hard to deny this application under the circumstances. This guy really has never done anything wrong. He's never received any environmental citations. He's had inspections. What the paperwork keeps saying is that he didn't inform the county. He didn't inform the county of the denial of his application. You got to look at what happened here. He filed a Tier 2 application on August 10th of 2016. The water board said that was incomplete by a notice in September of 2016. What the staff keeps saying in all their staff reports is the water board doesn't have his application. He didn't file a second application. But the evidence points to the fact that he did. And that was even kind of discussed in the Planning Commission. He went to the trouble to get all 4 signatures of all 4 landowners on the new Tier 3 application. He says he sent it in. I have every reason to believe he did send it in, and as they explained, the mass of applications before the water board created a chaotic situation. I think they just misplaced it. They just missed it. So he said he filed that at the end of October of 2016. Well, then he didn't hear anything. But I'm not sure it's up to him to be calling the water board and saying, what are you doing with my application? What are you doing with the processing? Well, he didn't know that they didn't have it. He didn't know they said they didn't have it until they issued a second notice on June 27th of 2017. And what was his reaction? He actually got that notice probably the first week of July of 2017. He calls him up, the guy he had dealt with. He leaves a message. Nothing. He calls him up, leaves another voicemail message. Third time, August 18th, he leaves another voicemail message. Now, that second notice of incomplete was sent to staff. They knew about it. They knew he'd received this notice. Now, they're saying they don't have any obligation to inform him. He has an obligation to inform them. You think after you pay $30,000 in taxes and fees, you might deserve a phone call before your application is denied. The other thing that staff's papers have said consistently is that, as I say, one, that he didn't file. Well, he did file. And secondly, that he didn't inform the staff. But he did everything he could as quickly as he could. When you look at it, if the staff and the applicant got the second notice of incomplete first week in July, they rejected his application the first week of September. The first month, he was calling people at the board, at the water board. And let me make it clear, the water board throughout this process, even now, is perfectly willing to work with him. He hasn't violated any environmental standards. But the statement that he still hasn't filed the right information, they told him when he got his situation on appeal straightened out with the county, they would accept his application. You can look at their correspondence, their email correspondence. And it says, pending your resolution of your appeal with the county. Why would he go spend another $30,000 on environmental consultants while this sort of Damocles is hanging over him? So, I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong. He didn't unduly delay. His reaction was perfectly right on. He gets this denial. He says, well, what's this about? You know, I filed back in October. And at that point, he learns they don't have his application. And he's calling, you know, when he gets nowhere on the phone because of a shift in staff and he can't get in touch with people at the water board, he calls the planning department staffer, Madeline Flandreau. She tries to get in touch with the water board without success for several weeks. But by then, you know, the denial was in. So I don't see where there's been any harm to the public, to the environment, to the county. The only harm I see here is to the applicant. That's it in a nutshell.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Oliveira.
Sir, are you aware if there's an appeal process with the State Water Quality Control Board?
I am not aware, but in this situation, there hasn't been any reason to avail himself of it because they're open-armed, welcoming his application at any time.
County Council, are you aware of any appeals process with the State Water Quality Control Board? I'm asking because I don't know.
I'm not familiar. We're not involved with that agency's appeal process. I'm not familiar with, I would imagine that they would have some kind of appeal process, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question would be, did your client inquire if there's an appeal process? Do you have that knowledge?
I don't have that knowledge, Supervisor Oliveira, but see, if you look at the email correspondence that's been filed and made a part of this record, they make very clear that it's all clear for him to file whenever he's done with this process here in a favorable manner. They made that very clear. So he didn't need to appeal the denial.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Gerhard.
Thank you. Did your client grow the last 2 years?
I believe he did.
Okay, this one's for planning staff. Have we sent someone out there to inspect?
There's no record in the file of an inspection having been done.
There is no?
There's nothing in our file that shows that inspection was done, whether it was signed off or not, at least on our.
It's okay. I was just looking at Google Earth, and I've been to a lot of farms. This is a big one.
No.
It looks like if it's not 22, it's more.
That I couldn't speak
But I know we
to.
don't have any, it's neither here nor there. I'm not part of this. Peter, do we have other examples of WCB not getting back to people? Is this a common problem? Have you seen this in the hundreds of applications we've done?
The water board has taken their time in processing the applications. Applications that were filed in August, September, in some cases, a notice didn't go out until January, whether it was incomplete. This one actually got one fairly quickly, if it was just a couple of weeks into September that the first notice went out. And apparently he did, he may have filed an application or at least responded in some way then. I don't know if there's been difficulty in corresponding with the registrants from the water board. We have experienced difficulties at times getting hold of staff, and there have been changeovers in staffing at the water board. But everything has been, we have documents of the correspondence that was made to the registrant, and it was always copied to us on those. So anytime that a letter was sent out to any of the registrants for whatever reason, whether it's issuance of the NOA, notice of incomplete application, we got a copy of it.
So, and your client did pay his taxes? Paid his
As far as
fees,
I know, yes, he has.
all his taxes, the canopy tax on that? Thank you.
Any other questions by the board?
And if I could make one thing clear, I know there's a ban in effect, but what he wants to at least be in a position to do is to carry forward, if he decides to in another jurisdiction, with a clean regulatory record, with no dings, with no denials, with no black marks. That's why he wants this denial reversed.
Okay. At this time, you have no other board questions. I'll open it up for the
There
public.
was, excuse me, Mr. Chair, there was a question about inspections, and there was an inspection correction list that was issued on May 25th, 2017, and there was several items that were listed on it. Needed to get a greenhouse, needed to permit the greenhouse with the electrical, there was other electrical wiring, as well as grading permit information that was required. That was issued on May 25th, 2017. There was no record of whether or not those corrections were made. They may have been, I don't know.
Good question. Mr. Williams, did your client conduct, since we're arguing that he did everything that he was supposed to do except for this one, did he make these corrections?
He told me he did. In fact, that was one of his points to me, was that he said, I was in and out of the county offices all the time, getting grading permits and this and that, things that I had to do. He says, I did all of them. Nobody ever mentioned to me that I was in some default somewhere or in some respect.
Do you have any record of whether the work was done?
There's nothing in the file that I can see that there was a final sign-off by the code enforcement inspections that those permits were complied with. They may have been, there's nothing in my file. To the point of Mr. Williams, the building department wouldn't have known if he was in for a building permit. The public works department wouldn't have known that he was deficient on the water board requirements had he gone in for a grading permit. If he'd come to the planning department office and said, what's the status of my application? I just want to check on it, we would have told him. But that never happened.
Again, we're talking about really a 2-month window. And the first part of that, he was on the phone trying like mad to get in touch and see what had gone wrong at the water board.
That's the phone evidence that's submitted?
Yes, we did.
Two
You
phone
know,
calls,
and
one at
three.
1:29 and one at 12:09?
And one at 8:18.
Yeah.
One at 8:18.
In fact, when
That's hardly calling like crazy, Mr. Williams. I would.
yeah, but you look at the time, 3
Mike
minutes
calls me more
here.
than that. Sorry, I'm just.
Well, you could tell that he must have been leaving some kind of substantive messages because the phone calls were 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and he was the planning commission noted that. So he was trying to remedy the situation, and I think it's kind of laughable when the October 26, 2017 staff report says, oh yeah, but he didn't call anybody between July 11th and August 18th. And like, if he had made one more call, that would have made all the difference in the world.
Is that one more question?
I think it was between August 18th and when they denied him. But there's just no substantive violation. There's no proof of harm. And I mean, how about a little bit of agency applicant comedy? I mean, after all, you got a guy that's paid taxes and $30,000 in fees and taxes, and they just tubed him. Didn't even ask him. And you say it's not their responsibility. If they know that he's received his second notice, they should inquire. We're going to deny you here. We can't see anything happening. All they did was just do that. He would tell them, but he had to go to them. He had to get denied and then go and say, wait, I've been trying like mad to get this straightened out with the water board. Can you help me, Madeline? Which she tried. And she got nowhere until she finally got in touch with a guy, I think, named Michael Parker. And he's the one that wrote all the emails since that say, hey, you're fine with us. You can still apply. Just, just hold off until you're cleared on your appeal, on your denial with the county. And that's where it was left.
Is your client here?
He is not here.
Did he appear at the planning commission?
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
I'm looking at staff report dated May 15th, 2018. I'm looking at on the board packet, page 87, and the first paragraph, and it says, a copy of the notice of incomplete NOI was forwarded to the planning department. And it says, on June 27, 2017, the CBRWQCB sent the applicant or the appealant a second notice of incomplete NOI, stating that in order to obtain coverage under the general order, the applicant needed to respond within 30 days. And it's saying that he was sent a notice. According to the staff report on the 27th, you're saying he never received it.
No. He received the second notice of incomplete, but until then, he thought they had his application and they were processing it. He didn't know that they were going to say they didn't have it. They never had it.
So did he had the first one and said he filed it incomplete because it was under tier.
Well,
Yeah, because
right,
he was under a different tier,
Right.
and they wanted him to resubmit
Tier 3,
for tier 3.
which he did.
Okay. And then you're saying, on these calls, he made 3 phone calls, one on 7/6, one on 7/11, and one on 8/18, and all he did was leave messages. He never got a response back from the person he was leaving these messages to at the water board.
That's correct, and that kind of gets into one of the other points I made in my paper is, what is the responsibility of an applicant to fully know and understand the processing issues of another agency, a regulatory agency like the Water Board? He had been working with the Water Board quite a bit, so he knew that there were problems. He had gotten some misinformation the first time around on, the square footage of his grow and tier 2 or tier 3, and so I mean he had kind of this impression that, well, it's sitting there, they're processing it, and what's his responsibility to call them up and say, hey, I haven't heard from you on my submittal. The normal thing would be you would wait to hear from them, and he did. He got the second notice of incomplete. But as soon as he learned that, he got on the horn and was trying to get in touch with people.
Okay. All right, at this time, I will open it up to the public. Are there any public members wish to speak on this item? None coming forward? All right. We will have, do you have anything further to say, Chris? There was no public comment. Usually we give an opportunity to answer any public comments or questions to you after, but there was no public comment. So I will give you an opportunity to speak in a few minutes again after staff. Staff, you have your summation and rebuttal?
Just a couple of points. Yes, it's true that the water board is, willing to work with the cultivators to meet the water board requirements. That's their mission. While they are working cooperatively with us to ensure that, those that are cultivating have the water board permits and vice versa, they're still looking after, how to protect the water quality of the state. And so they want to make sure that those who did cultivate are in compliance with their rules and regulations. So of course they would still accept the information to ensure that water quality rules of the state are met. And so as far as them allowing the continued cooperation with that agency, even if they've been denied here, that would make sense from the water board's perspective. The other thing to point out is that assuming that an application was filed in October of 2000, or shortly after the first notice of incomplete went out, it was still an incomplete application at that point in time. There was no biological assessment, there was no site management plan, and so that's been an incomplete application since that point in time. And so to say you've been diligently working with the water board, it's just not factually correct. You've made an attempt to work with them, but there's been no complete application filed. Long before the denial went out, it was an incomplete application. And with the second notice, we said, well, apparently he doesn't, isn't concerned about that. And so after a time period went by, we denied the application. We do not have the capacity to notify every applicant that, hey, we're missing this one thing. Actually, we've done quite a bit of that. We've gone through the paperwork and say, we're still missing certain documents. You need to submit it. But it's ultimately up to an applicant to know what the rules and requirements are for a permit from the county. And this was very clear. There were deadlines for submittal. It was well known what the requirements were. And we were always ready to answer questions. But for us to reach out to 740 applications or applicants when something was missing, especially something that had been ongoing for some time. We had 2 notices of incomplete application with nothing from the applicant that would have indicated he was working with them. If I were in that position, I would have said, hey, county, I'm working with the water board, let you know that I'm still in process. I want to make sure that my application is still good, and not just wait for someone to call me back. So based on that, we denied the application, and the planning commissions have held that decision.
I just had a couple of points in addition to, Mr. Williams pointed out that there had been some confusion between the appellant and the water board as to whether or not a Tier 3 application was required. However, as was pointed out by Commissioner Wooster during one of the hearings, it's what a Tier 3 application is it's right on the face of the application. This is in your board packet. I mean, it says cultivation areas and associated facilities occupy more than 1 acre. And that's one of the criteria, and his site clearly did, and he acknowledged during those hearings that it did. He had a debate about whether or not it was 200 feet from a wetland. The water board thought that it was. He disagreed. There was some other issue about an exemption. But the difference between a Tier 2 and a Tier 3 application is very substantial. Not only is the fee $10,000 rather than $2,500, but it requires a biological site assessment, as Peter indicated, a cultural resources assessment, and as well as a site management plan, which requires expenditure, as Mr. Williams estimated, of $30,000 or more. So by cultivating for 2 seasons without complying with applicable law, he just saved himself a lot of money. He saved himself at least $40,000. And Mr. Williams asked what the responsibility of an appellant is or an applicant is, and in his papers talked about us requiring him to stand in the water board's shoes. I don't think we're requiring anything like that. It seems to me that a person ought to pay the fee for the application and conduct the mandatory prerequisites, which all other cannabis cultivators in this county did. They all paid the 10 grand. They all got cultural resources assessment, site management plans, and biological site assessments. And Mr. Denham Newman didn't, and therefore had an incomplete application. So Peter's department Mr. Mauer's department was totally correct in its assessment. He didn't have a complete application, and that's a fair and reasonable basis for denial. There's nothing unfair happening.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yeah, my question has to do, again, with context. He said he was advised by the water board staff in September 2016 to reapply for Tier 3. And in what way did that advice come? Did that come by a phone call? Did it come via letter? I'm going to assure you that if that was their advice, it was probably via letter. Just knowing how they work. Because recall, back in 2016, I wasn't on this board at this time, but Trey Sherrill with the water board, who was the initiator of a lot of the work, it was based out of Reading, was the one doing that work. I had a lot of phone calls with Trey. He answered my phone. When he went away, he made sure that I knew who else was going to be involved, and I have their cards. I'm just having a difficulty with the idea of having a phone record that shows a 1-minute contact call, because the first 59 seconds don't count anyway when you look at a phone record. It's either a minute or 2 minutes. It's broken up into blocks of a minute. To say you have a 2-minute contact call, I can't even leave a voicemail message in 2 minutes and get that phone answered correctly. So I'm just having a problem with that phone record of having such short contacts and saying that they actually had a reasonable conversation with whoever's on the other end of the line. I don't know if that's That just me thinking here, but a reasonable effort is on the part of the applicant. Can you go back and just reread 165 and 4 again? Have you got it with you somewhere?
To answer your question, yes, he received a letter dated September 13th, 2016, with an incomplete notice of intent. Indicated the incorrect tier size was based on size and distance to the surface water body.
Do you remember also what it says regarding the resolution of that, of how they explain in that letter how to resolve it, don't they? Down towards the bottom? Or it might be on the second
Please
page.
resubmit a signed NOI with the missing or incomplete information that's indicated above. Please note that if the proposed cultivation site requires enrollment under Tier 2 or Tier 3, a biological site assessment, cultural resource inventory, and site management plan may be needed to be completed and submitted with the revised NOI.
So they not only tell you that you're not in compliance, but they also tell you what to do to fix it
Correct?
at that same point.
Yes.
And that doesn't require a phone call. That doesn't require phone calls to anybody. That simply says you go back on the site and get the form necessary, fill out the paperwork, and file it right.
And if you'd like, 17.95, 165N4 says the registrant must demonstrate compliance with the Central Valley Region of Water Quality Control Board regulations by providing document or evidence satisfactory to the planning director of either A, copy of the notice of applicability enrolling the cultivator for coverage under the general order consistent with the area proposed for cultivation, or a copy of the notice of intent to enroll the cultivator for coverage under the general order consistent with the area proposed for cultivation. If the registrant does not file the notice of intent with the Water Quality Control Board prior to the submittal of the registration to the county, the registrant shall submit all necessary forms and documents to the Water Quality Control Board to constitute a complete application for the agency's purposes no later than September 7th, 2016, and provide a copy of the documentation indicating receipt by the Water Quality Control Board to the planning director.
So anything other than what is stated in N4 is incomplete.
Yeah, there is no, the application did not contain, biological site assessment, didn't contain a check for the application, didn't contain, site management plan or cultural resources.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board questions? If not, Mr. Williams, I'll give you a couple minutes. But again, just a few minutes.
Again, it's kind of, who do you believe? What do you, if you're an applicant or registrant, whose directions do you follow? It's going to just take me a minute here because there's a lot of stuff. One thing is, if you look at the emails that have been submitted in the course of these appeals, you'll find an explanation for why he did what he did in terms of his submittals. This is a series, and they were certainly, I can't remember whether they were before you in total at your first hearing or whether they all came in before the Planning Commission, but I think they've all been in the whole time. When this happened, when the denial occurred, then he got into conversations with Trey Sherrill, who was at that point gone. He'd left the State Water Board. But he found him and asked questions about clarification. He says, September 2016, several phone conversations with Trey Sherrill of the Water Board. During these phone calls, I made it explicitly clear that my site does not qualify as Tier 3 because it is in fact just over 200 feet from the North Fork Calaveras River. And furthermore, my site does not exceed 1 acre in size. I requested an on-site measurement. These conversations culminated in Trey recommending that I submit a new NOI as Tier 3, but not pay additional fee or submit any supplemental paperwork. His reasoning for this was that they were very backed up and we could revisit my assertions when the Water Board got caught up with their current backlog. I do not have the exact date, but either in late September or early October, I submitted the Tier 3 NOI. Okay? That's Trey Sherrill writes him back. Says the events as you described them are certainly plausible. It was a super busy, crazy time as we were somewhat developing the regulatory program on the fly with a flood of applications from Calaveras County. I wish you the best. Other emails from the Water Board, this one from Michael Parker. There is nothing that precludes you, and this is dated January 10th, 2018, after the denial, after we filed a couple appeals here. No, there's nothing that precludes you from enrolling in the new statewide cannabis general order on our end. And there's even more compelling testimony of emails than
Is that
that.
information that was not presented?
No, it was presented.
Okay.
All these emails were part of the record. I'm just looking for one that's even clearer. Okay, here we go. This is from Michael Parker. It's dated September 19th, 2017. Thank you for getting in contact with me. As per our discussion, you stated you're working on providing the requested documents for the specific tier size of your site. This conversation has satisfied the second notice of incomplete, in which the 30 days to respond no longer applies. After we receive the required documentation, we can move forward with the permitting process. Now, this is in response to his question. He says, if I'm allowed to proceed with my registration from Calaveras County, can you confirm there's nothing barring me from enrolling the Water Board Cannabis General Order? And then we get very clear with Michael Parker. The State Water Resources Control Board, I don't know if there's a date on this. Looks like it's January of this year. The State Water Resources Control Board adopted a statewide general order on 17 October 2017. Since we have yet to receive the documentation needed to process your enrollment under the Central Valley Board's order, you will have to reapply under the statewide general order for coverage pending the outcome of your appeal with the county. You will be receiving a letter from us shortly that explains this. The enrollment portal from the statewide general order can be found at the following locations. So these are the signals he's getting from the state board that he's okay. Yeah, he got a notice of incomplete on his second submittal, which they apparently lost, but he didn't know they lost. But they're saying, yeah, as soon as you get your denial of your appeal straightened out, then let's start down this road on this regulatory framework that he mentions here. So I think you got to cut the applicants some slack. They're not experts in every agency's regulatory regime. I mean, he's talking to people in the water board, and they're telling him what to do, giving him advice, and he's going with it. So say, well, he still hasn't submitted the application. No, he hasn't. He was told he didn't need to. And if I had an appeal pending that was life or death, I wouldn't have done it either. Spend $30,000. He'd retain people. He lined up all of his environmental consultants, but he just didn't give them the go-ahead when he was given this direction and instruction from the water board. Am I making myself clear?
Questions? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, do I have any other public comments at this time on the issue? No? Okay. Board questions, or Mr. Alvera, you have your light on?
I do, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mauer, how big is this parcel? And the cultivation site is,
They registered 22,000 square feet.
and within 200 feet of that location for the cultivation site, is there a stream or live stream as indicated?
I believe it's the Calaveras River is approximately 200 feet. I think the question that the water board had, and pointed out in Mr. Parker's email, was that it's not just the cultivation area that they count as part of the surface, it's all the surface associated with it. And that's the September 19th email from Mr. Parker to Mr. Dennis Newman that Mr. Williams just read into the record, explained that the reason why they declared it was a tier 3 requirement, not a tier 2, is because that total disturbance area. And that was explained to Mr. Dennis Newman, I believe it was September 19th, 2017. And that
Thank-
requirement is stated on the face of the application. It says 1 acre of disturbed earth, including facilities. And so driveway, pump house, et cetera, all counted as far as the water board was concerned. And Mr. Williams can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that during the planning commission hearing, Mr. Denham Newman acknowledged that he realized that his site, on that basis alone, required a tier 3 application. And if I'm misremembering that, you can correct me, Mr. Williams, but I believe Mr. Denham Newman acknowledged that he knew that his site, at least subsequent to his conversations with Mr. Parker, was a tier 3. And as far as I'm concerned, his ongoing failure beyond that acknowledgement to get the required site assessments done speaks to failure to make reasonable and good faith efforts to comply with the general order. And again, as Mr. Mills pointed out, it was incumbent upon Mr. Denham Newman to provide evidence of complete application to Mr. Mauer by September 7th, 2016. And as Mr. Mauer alluded earlier, the State Water Resources Control Board does have an open door policy to anyone who wishes to register, because their mission is to protect the waterways. And so every cannabis farmer anywhere within their jurisdiction is always welcome to comply with their requirements as far as they're concerned. But our code says that they have to provide proof of a complete application by September 7th, 2016, and there's no way you can look at the situation and find that was accomplished.
Okay, Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
So let's go back to what staff had said in an email now after September, this is September 21st, 2017, where it stated she understands the miscommunication during the conversation with you and Trey, but the record only shows that your site has been out of compliance with the water board's requirements for over a year, and no action was taken until you received a denial letter. Okay, how much do you need poked, in essence, to get your attention? Our requirement was September 7th of 2016. And there should have been a concerted effort on the part of the applicant. And I'm not hearing that there was a concerted effort on the part of the applicant to come into compliance with that point for N4.
I share your point of view.
Okay.
Can I respond to that?
No, we're board questions right now. Any other board questions? If not, I'm going to close the hearing. We'll enter into board discussions and deliberations. Any comments? All right, is there a motion? Do I have anybody wanting to?
Mr. Chair, I so moved to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission to appeal this request.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Clarification on what the action was, I didn't understand the motion.
There was a motion to uphold the appeal denial by the Planning Commission.
To uphold the denial,
Yeah. Of the appeal. All right, moving on to item number 6.
Mr. Chair, I show on the staff report that a PowerPoint presentation is included in this. Does the department need time to set up?
No, that was the PowerPoint from the Planning Commission presentation.
Oh, okay. So, item 6 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial cannabis registration 2016-729 for Carlos de la Osa III on APN 049-009-012, file number 2016-729.
Is the appellant present?
No, he's in Florida with the family.
He's in Florida, so the appellant is not present.
Mr. Chair, to that effect, I received a call from the appellant on Friday the 11th requesting if it was possible to get a refund and withdraw his appeal. I explained that a refund wasn't possible, but he could certainly withdraw it and to give me that request in writing, and I have not received that request yet.
County Council, moving forward.
Is there anyone else here that is present on his behalf? Or that was going to speak on his behalf?
I'm here to speak for the landowner.
Okay.
Yeah, even so, we would have to have some type of proof that they're representing him if they're not a lawyer, I'm sure. So, well, if he's not here, then we can move forward with denying his application or his appeal.
Well, you would still conduct the hearing, yes.
Okay, all right. So I will open the hearing and we will hear from staff.
Chair, before we start, has there been any council present at any of the previous hearings on this matter?
With this appeal, no.
Thank you.
And yesterday, I received a letter from one of the neighbors signed by several of the other neighbors on Golden Gate Drive there, in support of upholding the denial.
I just wanted to note that letter was in fact submitted to the board clerk and was disseminated to the board, I believe, yesterday via email directly from. But we can certainly.
Yeah, counsel, I have a question. Seeing that that letter was submitted to the board, and could that be or construed as new evidence not heard by the planning commission?
Yes, that would be the case. I mean, certainly it's correspondence to the board, but as far as this appeal is concerned, it is not part of the record.
Then we are under no obligation to consider that.
You do not have to.
But
You're
we
not
can
required
if we
to.
choose. But
Certainly.
we can if we choose, correct?
You can. I would caution, our code allows for you to have the option to refer it back to the planning commission to consider new evidence if that new evidence would alter or affect the outcome of the planning commission's decision. Considering that would support the planning commission's decision, I don't believe that that would be necessary or prudent under the circumstances. But the board, like I said, it is not part of the record, but it certainly is correspondence that the board was privy to.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure that we have clarity here. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So Ben Diamond, planner trainee, appeal 2016-729 for Carlos de la Osa. This application was denied for 3 reasons. For failing to notify the planning department and provide new contact information within 72 hours of a change in their contact information occurring. The appellant admitted to this during the hearing, saying that he did have a change in his mailing address and forgot to notify the planning department of that change. And because he didn't notify the planning department that his mailing address had changed, the packets that the sheriff's office sent to him over the course of several months in order to finish the background check were never received, and because of that, he failed to complete the background check process as well. And on April 20th, 2017, Code Compliance conducted an inspection of the site. At this time, there was no cultivation observed, just a very large graded pad. A review of aerial imagery found that this pad was graded after the May 10th, 2016 deadline. It was very much in the portion of the parcel designated as the cultivation area and resulted in an expansion of the cultivation site by roughly 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. And based on those grounds, the Planning Commission voted to deny it on all the findings that staff made.
Any board questions?
Was there a permit issued for the grading?
Yes, the applicant did apply for a grading permit, but conducted the work prior to the permit being issued. And to my knowledge, a grading permit has not been issued for the work to date.
Nor any kind of site plan?
I believe he was sent red lines concerning the site plan, that it was
Okay.
deficient in some regard.
So there's never been an inspection by the county for the work that was performed?
Subsequent to the April 20th inspection by Code Compliance, no.
Okay, thank you.
Did he actually grow in 2016 and 2017?
I believe so.
I guess the question would be, I believe so. I'd
The
like to
aerial
be sure
images
that.
of 2016 show that he certainly grew prior to the pad being graded over the 2016 cultivation area.
Okay, so
And
we
in
don't. does it-
2017, he also said that he cultivated on it. We don't have imagery that shows live plants on it, but the most recent 2017 aerials show smart pots beginning to be installed on the graded pad. And
Okay.
during the hearing, he admitted to growing on it.
We may hear more in public comment.
So we never, because of the status of this, we never performed an inspection on the site?
Subsequent to the one on April 20th, 2017, no.
No, okay, all right. Okay, any other board questions? All right, since the appellant is not here, I'll open it up for public comments.
Thank you guys for your time. This is my first time ever being in front of any of you. I would say please just grant me a little bit of leniency since I'm new.
That microphone up and speak into it.
There you go. The aerial photos, if you have an iPhone and you look under Google Map, you will find one cultivation, and if you have a Samsung and Android and you look under Google Map at the same address, you will find a second cultivation. I have both photos with me. There has been 2 grows there. I'm speaking for my grandmother who we are getting through a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. We're trying to put an end to it on the property. We were told it was a small medical, she was told it was a small medical grow. My grandmother's here, by the way. She just asked me to speak on her behalf. We just during a recess, we went up there and took a look, and yeah, there's been a recent pool, and there's stuff going on up there, and just needs to come to a stop. We're not here to protest this. We're actually here in support to the neighbor. They shouldn't have to go through this. No one should have to go through it. I'm not against people and what the things that they want to do and things of that sort. But when it causes issues, it needs to come to a stop. And that's where we're at. Carlos is a Florida resident. He's not even a resident of California. Just thought I'd bring that to your guys' attention. That's why he doesn't have an actual permanent address. His permanent address is where the house is on the site. He's been sleeping on a couch. So there's that. And he's in Florida for a week. We were told that there was a verbal from a board that they could go ahead and grow and cultivate, just a verbal license until their information went through. They were graded, they were perfect, they had all their grading information. They graded 28,000 square foot, built a dry house, all permitted, all okayed through you guys. Again, smoke and mirrors. I'm not putting any words in anyone's mouth, so please don't think that. We're just trying to get to the end of it and clear up any lies or any misunderstandings. I don't know these gentlemen's name. Do I just refer to them as staff, as you guys have? I don't want to just. Is there any way if there was a license produced or anything like that, how would we go about getting it to protect ourselves, to protect the homeowner and protect the land? Because there's nothing stopping the federal people to come in and actually claim it for trafficking and money laundering, because obviously the sales, when you guys, I don't know if any of you guys hunt, but if you guys go hunting and you give a deer a rifle, it ain't gonna be no fun, and that's where we're at. It's no fun when a rabbit has the gun. And you guys telling someone, hey, you can grow 20 plants and grow 200 plants for personal use. Let's open up some eyes here. You don't need 47 pounds for personal use. But the homeowner, we don't want land taken. We don't want our homes taken. We don't want to be a burden on our community as well. And that's my concern. And the disrespect to people. This man I've never met until today. His wife was ran off the road by people, the traffic. Or he was ran off the road. I apologize. It's a hazard. It could be anybody. We're just trying to make it safe. That's all. Okay. Thanks.
It's news to me about this letter because according to the law that he stated at the first hearing is that they only have to report 500 feet from the house. Okay? I'll be honest with you, that's a bunch of malarkey because these are 5-acre parcels on Garamendi X land, okay? And there's no way that these people would have known unless somebody went and talked to them about it. I'm glad to see they are against it as well. Because I'm against it for 2 reasons. There's more traffic going to a dead end. That tells me that something's going on down there that nobody is watching. Okay? Somebody is selling, giving, whatever the case may be, but they're trafficking. The other thing is this gentleman has a business that he is growing marijuana. He drives around with Florida plates and lives in Sacramento, or did live in Sacramento. Now I understand he's living on the couch of the house. But still, why is he running around with Florida plates and not having to be forced to have California plates. He's a businessman in this state. He should have California plates. The Calaveras River is down below his grow. There's got to be some leaching going down there to that water system. It's not my water system, but it's Valley Springs and down below, because I get my water further up the McCullamy. But I think there should be a lot of things that need to be checked on this gentleman and this grow. This is not a good situation, and there are kids that live in that house, and they're being brought up around marijuana. I think this gentleman also told me off the record that the place reeked of marijuana. So that tells me that somebody's using it there. Because you can't get the smell unless you actually smoke it.
Any other public?
To touch on what he said, there is a little bit of leaching from the back river. There was a small pump hose runs off to the back river. I don't know if that's relevant. I don't know if he had a permit for it. I don't know how that works.
Okay.
So.
All right, since the appellant's not here, we'll go back to staff. Any final comments or?
We don't really have anything to add to the appeal hearing. There was a couple of questions that were asked. This is sort of the purpose of the review process. The urgency ordinance allowed people that registered to grow to continue to grow until their applications were processed. We're at the point where we determined that this one did not meet the requirements of being denied. He appealed it. This would be the final step in the appeal process before the county to determine if we erred in that, and if the appeal is upheld, then if he hasn't already abated the situation, then the code enforcement team would go out after the site.
And they never did provide a water board application. And if it was finalized,
It appears that he actually got a notice of incomplete for the first NOI and was given a second one on July 11th, 2017. And that appears to be where it stopped.
that's where it stops, okay. So he doesn't even have that. Okay, Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Yeah, going back to this grading now, is the landowner going to be responsible for pulling a grading permit and correcting the situation, getting it inspected, and
Yes.
some
Grading
monkeys?
occurred, grading permits required, whether the site was abated or not.
So now it's,
Ultimately, erosion control measures and compaction and anything else required of a grading permit is still going to be required.
so this means that they may need to hire an environmental engineer of some type to get the plans necessary to make whatever corrections might be needed to prevent soil erosion and water runoff.
Absolutely.
I got to commend you folks.
Yes.
I hope you know I may quote you.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll close the hearing, bring it back to the board for deliberation, discussion, or a motion. Supervisor
Mr. Chair?
Garman.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. For the record, my family hasn't owned that property for almost 50 years, but I did grow up building some of those houses, or rather playing in the ditch with Tonka choys being made. But I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready, Mr. Chair, to
Okay,
get this
you
thing
want to
moving
make a
along.
motion?
Make a motion to accept the Planning Commission's denial of this appeal.
I will second, Mr. Chair.
A motion, and a second. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. on to item number 7.
Item 7 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-554 for John Lowry on APN 014-023-002.
Is the appellant present?
I believe I saw him earlier.
Can we look and see if he's out in the foyer? All right, the appellant is not here. So we will move forward. I'll open the hearing, staff presentation.
All right, this is Miguel Contreras with the Planning Department. I'm here to present Appeal 2016-554 for John Lowry. Good afternoon to the Board of Supervisors. Just real quick, this application was denied for failing the Sheriff Department's background check. Sheriff Department denied him. Planning Director concurred with the denial. And that's basically it.
Okay. Any board questions? Seeing none. Appellant's not here. Is there any public comments, questions? Seeing none. We'll bring it back. Does staff have a summation or rebuttal for any of that?
None.
Seeing none. Board questions. Supervisor Oliveira, your light is on.
Yes, Mr. Chair, seeing no board questions, I would move for,
Let me close
Close the hearing.
first. Hearing is now closed. Now we're open for motion.
seeing no deliberation by the board, I would move to uphold the Planning Commission's decision to deny this application appeal.
I'll second.
A motion by Oliveira, second by Garamendi. Any other questions? No? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll take a couple minute break and allow them to clear out.
Let the crowd clear.
All right, moving forward. Final item of the day. Madam Chair, supervisor announcements.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, such as mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
We'll start with Supervisor Garamendi today.
I didn't cost taxpayers anything as far as going out of the county. All my meetings were internal. A lot of county staff meetings around OES, planning, buildings. It was a full lead. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no reportable events or meetings for the last week.
Supervisor Mills.
Just to report out that we had the Hot Copper Car Show to benefit the Lions and also benefit the community down in Copperopolis. There were 275 vehicles down there. Literally didn't have enough space for all of them. If you imagine a 65 GTO having to park out on the street, that's just how loaded that place was.
I lost the key.
Attended the Eastside GSA. Ollie from Woodward and Curran is presented the data sets that were going to be required as part of our moving forward with our plan, our action plan. Fortunately, Calaveras County has a very detailed data set going back to 2004, and I was able to give him a copy of that so that they had a good reference point. Also attended a meeting with the Tuolumne County and our CAO and some other people. I appreciate you being there. I think that the gentleman that was trying to close off a finger of Green Springs on Lake Tulloch found out that maybe Calaveras County does care about what's going on. Because remember, if something happens in Tuolumne County on Lake Tulloch, it does affect Calaveras in some way. And likewise, we affect them. So that helped a lot. The big deal was yesterday, attended the Stanislaus National Forest Tour initiated by Congressman Alfa and Congressman McClintock. And the Forest Service Interim Chief, Vicki Christensen, was there, had a chance to go face-to-face, along with CDF, or CAL FIRE, sorry. CAL FIRE and Ken Pimlott was there, along with Congressman Alfa. But there was a lot of people from the logging industry, SPI, some environmental, interested environmental groups like 2Care, et cetera. What was really interesting came out of that is that the U.S. Forest Service is going to begin to deconstruct some of the environmental policies that have been put in place over the years. And their way of explaining it was, we've built all of these policies for so long, but whenever we build a new rule, we never bother to look back at the old rules and take any of them out of the closet. So it's time to clean the closet a little bit. They're wanting to do shared stewardship, and they showed us several sites where they were able to thin the forest, reduce the fuel load, but do so in a way that there was absolutely no cost to the taxpayer. And this is through public-private partnerships, and they are moving forward very quickly to get that done throughout the entire California area. The amount of timber that has been removed now in California is over 100 million board feet this year. They've never achieved that this early in a season since 1986. So it's a long time in coming. During that period in the mid-'80s, there were as high as 350 to 360 million board feet removed. So we are not back to the level that we were taking timber out back in the 80s. And that rung home very clearly. The other thing I wanted to talk to them about was our roads. Our forestry roads have to be in shape to be able to help us with wildfires and being able to access some of these areas like Spicer and Donalds and Beardsley on the Stanislaus. But the primary goal is that to have those good one-on-one conversations with the policymakers and those people in the U.S. Forest Service that really can help us to make a difference. Also an understanding, as part of the stewardship agreement, means that the counties will, in essence, be given the right to control certain portions of land on the U.S. Forest Service and to be able to make use of the values of the timber that's removed from those lands. It is something that Tuolumne County is into right now, and I think it's a good piece of what that stewardship agreement can do for us and administrating those programs through the Forest Service. So more to come on that. And that's all I have for now. See you at the fair.
Thank you for that report. Supervisor Platt.
I have nothing to report out on, and I will be Friday from 2 to 5 at the fair.
Serving in the county booth?
I don't know, it's just, I'll be at a place where you just come up and insult supervisors. I get the first seat, you get second. Oh, thanks a lot.
All right, and I have nothing to report as far as any money spent by the county. I did meet with several constituents. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I do need to make mention of one event I will be attending, and that's going to be the CSAC Legislative Conference tomorrow and Thursday in Sacramento. We'll be attending that with, I believe, CEO that's going to be up there also. We do have meetings with several political organizations and some congressmen and some other business, so we'll be busy for the next few days. Then I will be at the fair.
All right. Well, I will be at the fair, probably at least 2, maybe 3 days out of the 4 that it's open. I will be Sunday in the booth with Kathy Galino, from 10 to 3, and then I will jump the frog at the competition between myself and Amanda, the mayor of Angels, and the sheriff and the police chief in our little competition we have going. So, Supervisor, excuse me, CAO Lutz.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. There's a wager as far as our competition. If I win, she has to buy the CAO, myself, and the chief administrative officer of the city lunch in the county of a restaurant of my choice. If she wins, I have to buy all 4 of us lunch inside the city somewhere of her choice. So.
Supervisor Toffenelli.
You win no matter what happens.
And plus, the Supreme Court ruled that betting on gambling is illegal now, so you're all right.
Well, he may win, but you know that McDonald's is in the city, so I'll be pushing for that venue. County Council, nothing. Madam Clerk, nothing. Well, with that, we are adjourned.